The night Wendell stood up at the table he couldn't have afforded without me, and introduced me to his colleagues as my wife, she handles the home stuff, I didn't cry. I didn't excuse myself to the bathroom. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, and smiled at the woman across from me, like he hadn't just erased 11 years of my life in one sentence. I had catered that dinner. Not professionally. I had planned it, found the restaurant, made the reservation, coordinated with his assistant Phyllis on the guest list, confirmed dietary restrictions for 14 people, picked up his dry cleaning that afternoon so the charcoal suit would be pressed, reminded him twice about the parking garage on Clement because he always forgot. I had done all of that between my own client calls and a full day at my desk. And when the moment came, when Wendell was finally standing with a glass raised and people looking at him like he'd built something, he looked at me and said, "Home stuff." His VP of operations, a woman named Cecile, caught my eye across the table. Just for a second. But I saw it. That was 8 months before the promotion gala. I need to back up because none of this makes sense without the before. And the before is the part people always skip. Wendell and I met when we were both 26. He was working mid-level at a logistics firm downtown, making decent money but not remarkable money, the kind where you split checks and think carefully about vacations. I was a contracts coordinator at a property management company, which doesn't sound like much, but I was good at it. I understood money. I understood structure. I understood how to read the fine print before you sign anything, which turned out to be relevant later in ways I couldn't have predicted. We got married when I was 29. I wore my grandmother Loretta's earrings and cried during my vows, which I never expected to do. Wendell cried too. I remember thinking, this man, this is the one. The first few years were genuinely good. We worked hard, saved carefully, bought a townhouse in Decatur when the market gave us a window, and I talked Wendell into putting both names on the mortgage, even though he wanted to simplify the paperwork and just use his. I don't know what made me insist. Some instinct. Maybe I'd seen enough property contracts to know that simplifying paperwork is never actually simple. Wendell got a better job when he was 32. Wendell got a better job when he was then a better one at 34. Each time I was the one who read the offer letters, negotiated the benefits language, pointed out the non-compete clause that would have locked him out of his industry for 2 years if he'd left. He'd slide the papers across the kitchen counter and I'd go through them with a highlighter and a pen, and we'd talk through every section. He used to say I should have been a lawyer. I used to say I basically was one for free. By the time he was 38, Wendell was a regional director at Hargrove Meridian, which is a supply chain consulting firm with offices in 6 cities. Good company, real money. The kind of money where we stopped thinking carefully about vacations. I want to be clear about something. I was proud of him, genuinely. Not the performed kind of proud where you're secretly resentful, but doing the face. I was proud in the way where you feel it behind your sternum, warm and uncomplicated. Wendell had worked for it. He was smart and he was good with people in rooms. I knew that about him from the beginning. What I didn't see clearly, or maybe what I didn't let myself see, was how he started moving through those rooms like I wasn't part of what had built him. It was gradual. These things always are. He stopped mentioning me in professional conversations, not dramatically, not in a way you could point to. He'd come home and tell me about a dinner with a client, and I'd ask how it went, and he'd say, "Good, good," and there was just this faint erasure. I wasn't woven into the story anymore. I was the context he came home to, not the person he carried with him. The home stuff comment at the dinner was the first time the erasure happened in front of other people. I said nothing that night. I drove home, hung up my dress, washed off my makeup, and lay in the dark thinking about Cecile's expression. That half-second of recognition from a woman I'd only met once. She'd seen it. Which meant other people saw it too. Which meant Wendell did not care. I started paying closer attention after that. Not in a paranoid way, in a careful way. The kind of careful that feels almost calm from the outside. The first thing I noticed was the credit card statements. We had a joint account and individual accounts, which was something we'd set up early in the marriage and never revisited. I was still depositing my income into the joint account the way I always had. Wendell had started, quietly, gradually, shifting a larger portion of his deposits to his individual account. Not all at once, a few hundred more here, a different allocation there. By the time I was looking at it clearly, he was contributing about 40% of what he used to contribute to the joint account and keeping the rest separate. I did not confront him. I made a spreadsheet. The second thing I noticed was the hotel charge on the joint card. Embassy Suites, downtown. A Thursday. Wendell had told me he was in Birmingham that Thursday for a site visit. I didn't know about Birmingham being cancelled until I checked the mileage on his car 2 days later, and it was exactly the same as it had been before he left. His car hadn't moved. I didn't panic. I don't say that to sound tough. I say it because panic would have made me sloppy, and I couldn't afford to be sloppy. I went back through 6 months of statements. Then 12. There was a pattern. Hotel charges on days that didn't match travel. A restaurant I'd never heard of. Twice a month, always a Friday, always for 2. A jewelry purchase at a boutique on Pont de Leon that I absolutely did not receive. I have no idea who received it, but it was not me. I also found the business filing. Wendell had registered an LLC 3 months earlier. Hargrove Meridian Consulting Solutions, Incorporated, which sounds almost identical to his employer's name, which was not an accident. It was registered in his name only, with a registered agent address that turned out to be a UPS store in Buckhead. I found it because I was looking for a receipt in his email for something else entirely, and there it was, a confirmation from the Georgia Secretary of State's office. I sat with that for a long time. Then I called my cousin Felicia, who is a CPA, and I described what I was looking at without using Wendell's name. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That sounds like someone building a financial exit. Are you okay?" I told her I was fine. I told her I needed to understand what I was looking at before I did anything. She said she'd help me. The Gala had been in the works for 3 months. Hargrove Meridian was promoting Wendell to Vice President of Eastern Operations, and the company was throwing a dinner to market. The venue was the Marriott Marquis Ballroom, downtown Atlanta. 250 people, a live band, the kind of event that requires a seating chart. Wendell asked me to handle it. Not the company's event coordinator, me. Because I was good at it, he said. Because I knew how to make things feel right. Because he trusted me. Those were the words we used. He trusted me. I coordinated with the event planner at the Marquis. I worked with the florist. Ivory arrangements. Very clean. His preference. I confirmed the catering menu, approved the wine list, reviewed the AV setup for his presentation reel. I ordered his custom cufflinks from a jeweler on Peachtree. I wrote a draft of his introduction remarks, which he used almost word for word. I arranged car service for his parents, Beverly and Horace, who were flying in from Memphis, because I knew his father's knees had been bad, and navigating ride-shares through downtown was hard for them. Wendell's mother, Beverly, called me the week before the gala to say how much it meant to her that I was doing all of this. She said, "Lonnie, you are the reason that man knows how to stand in a room." I told her I didn't know about all that. She said, "I do. My name is Lonnie. I should have said that earlier. Lonnie Ashworth Pierce, though at the time I was still going by Lonnie Pierce because Wendell had been slowly, subtly rolling his eyes at hyphenated names for 2 years, and I had let it get to me. That bothers me now. It's a small thing, but it bothers me. The night of the gala, I wore a burgundy dress I'd bought in September and saved for something that felt like it mattered. I got my hair done at Renata's, which I almost never do on a weekday. I took a cab downtown and met Wendell in the lobby, where he was already surrounded by colleagues, laughing at something. Comfortable in the way people are comfortable when they feel like a room belongs to them. He looked at me when I came in, smiled, said, "You look good," then turned back to the conversation. I introduced myself to Beverly and Horace and sat with them for a while. Beverly kept squeezing my hand. Horace told me the centerpieces were beautiful. I said the florist had done a wonderful job. Beverly said, "You picked them." I said yes, I had. Dinner was good. The salmon was better than I expected. The wine I'd selected was exactly right, a Willamette Valley Pinot, which I knew Wendell preferred and which his bosses were impressed by, and I heard one of them say so. The presentation started around 8:30. Wendell's reel ran, 15 years of work, condensed and polished and moving, and I watched it from my seat at table 7, which was not the head table. I had put myself at table 7 because I thought it would feel less conspicuous. I see now that this is also a thing I do, make myself smaller to avoid discomfort. I'm working on it. Wendell spoke beautifully. He thanked the company. He thanked his team. He thanked his parents, which made Beverly press her fingers to her mouth. He mentioned a few colleagues by name: Darren, who'd mentored him; Phyllis, his assistant; a former manager named Bob who'd taken a chance on him years ago. He did not mention me. He got a standing ovation. I stood too. I clapped for my husband. Afterward, during the reception portion, he found me at table 7. He was holding a glass of champagne, and he was glowing the way he glows when things have gone well. He leaned down and said close to my ear, in a voice that was quiet but not kind, "I need you to clear out before the after party. Just the work people tonight." I looked up at him. "We're going to Del Frisco's after. It's just, industry people. It'll be boring for you." I looked at him for what felt like a long time. The band had started playing something low and easy. People were moving around us, laughing, refilling glasses. "You sure?" I said. "It's just easier," he said. I nodded. I picked up my clutch. I kissed him on the cheek because Beverly was watching from across the room, and I didn't want to do anything that would upset her. I said, "Have a good night." I walked out of the Marriott Marquis at 8:57 on a Thursday in November. I stood on Peachtree Street for a moment. The air was cold. There was a line of black cars idling along the curb. I could hear the faint sound of the band from inside. Then I called Felicia. "Is now a good time?" I said. "I've been waiting for you to call," she said. I had already talked to my attorney, whose name is Patricia Wynne, 2 weeks before the gala. I want to be clear about that timeline. I am not someone who acts on impulse. I had sat with Patricia in her office on a Tuesday afternoon and laid out every document I had, and Patricia had looked at everything carefully and then looked at me and said, "Lonnie, this is financial fraud. He's been dissipating marital assets and using a deceptive business entity to redirect income. You have a strong case." I asked her what I should do. She told me what my options were. I went home and thought about it for 2 weeks. I had not yet decided until Wendell leaned down at his own gala, the one I had built, and told me to clear out. From the sidewalk outside the Marriott Marquis, I made 4 phone calls. The first was to Patricia. I told her to file. She said she'd have the papers ready Monday. I said thank you. The second was to my bank. I spoke with a fraud specialist and requested that my name be used to freeze joint account activity pending a legal dispute. Patricia had already told me I could do this and what the correct language was. The third was to the event coordinator at the Marquis. Her name was Keisha, and she had been responsive and professional throughout this whole process, and I felt genuinely bad for what I was about to do. I explained that there was a personal matter and that I needed to rescind my authorization on the remaining vendor invoices for the evening. The band, the bar service, the late-night dessert table, the photo booth, which were scheduled to be charged to the joint card I had just frozen. Keisha was gracious about it. She said she understood. She said she hoped everything would be okay. The fourth call was to Beverly. This is the call I thought about the longest. Beverly had been kind to me for 11 years. She had treated me like I was hers. She did not deserve to be blindsided. I told her what was happening. Not everything, not all of it right there on a Thursday night in November, but enough. I told her I had found evidence of financial deception and that I had spoken with an attorney. I told her I was sorry. I told her I loved her and Horace and that what came next between me and Wendell had nothing to do with how I felt about them. Beverly was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Baby, I told that man. I told him." Her voice broke on the second told. She said, "What do you need from me right now?" I said I didn't need anything. I just didn't want her to find out from someone else. She said, "Where are you?" I said I was outside. "Getting some air," she said. "Go somewhere warm. Don't stand out in the cold." I called a cab. I went to Felicia's house, which is in Kirkwood, 20 minutes away. She had tea ready, and she did not make me talk until I was ready to talk, which is why Felicia is the kind of person you call when things fall apart. We sat at her kitchen table until almost 2 in the morning. She walked me through the financial picture, what I was likely entitled to, what the LLC complication added, what it would mean that Wendell had been systematically redirecting income. She pulled up her laptop, and we looked at numbers together. At some point, she said, "Lonnie, you're going to be okay. Like actually, financially okay. I already knew this." But it helped to hear it. I want to tell you what happened at Del Frisco's, because I heard about it in pieces over the following days. Wendell got there around 9:30. He was with a group from work, 6 or 7 people. He ordered champagne because it was a celebration. At some point during the evening, his credit card was declined. He tried the joint card next. Also declined. He didn't have enough on his personal card for the tab by that point, because he'd been incrementally draining the joint account while keeping his personal account lean to obscure the transfers. This is a thing Felicia later explained to me. People who are financially hiding things often don't keep enough accessible cash, because they're always moving money somewhere else. A colleague covered the tab. I heard this from Phyllis, who texted me 3 days later to say she didn't know what was happening, but that she hoped I was okay. I told her I was. I asked her to please not relay information to Wendell, and she said, of course. Wendell came home that night to find my side of the closet half empty and a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I've spoken with an attorney. Please contact Patricia Wynn's office. Her number is on the card attached." Patricia had suggested a different note, shorter, more legal language. I rewrote it myself. Beverly called him the next morning. I don't know exactly what she said. I know that Horace called me that afternoon to check on me and to say that Beverly was taking care of things on that end. I don't know what that means exactly. But Beverly had a way of taking care of things on that end that Wendell had been afraid of since he was a boy, and I trusted that. The divorce took 8 months. I will not walk you through all of it, because some of it was tedious and some of it was genuinely painful, and I don't want to dress either of those things up. There were days I sat at Felicia's kitchen table and cried, because I missed who Wendell had been when we were 26. That person was real. I'm not going to pretend he wasn't. But the crying always stopped, and then I went back to work. Patricia was right that I had a strong case. The LLC was used to redirect $47,000 in consulting income over 14 months. Income earned during the marriage, which meant it was marital property. The hotel charges, the jewelry, the restaurant bills totaling more than $12,000. These were dissipation of marital assets, which Georgia courts take seriously. The townhouse in Decatur, which had appreciated considerably since we bought it, was in both names. I am telling you the numbers because I think women are too often told not to talk about money. The numbers matter. The numbers are how you know what you're walking away with, and whether you can stand up straight. I kept the townhouse. I kept my retirement accounts, which I had been diligently contributing to for 15 years. I received an equitable share of the LLC income that had been hidden, after Felicia helped document the discrepancy. I kept my grandmother Loretta's earrings, which were never in question, but I want to mention it because I wore them the day we signed the final papers, and I felt her with me. Wendell moved into an apartment in Midtown. I heard through Beverly, who remained in my life, which I treasure, that he was still at Hargrove Meridian, though the promotion had come with more scrutiny than he'd expected. Apparently, the LLC situation had made some people at the company uncomfortable once it came up in the divorce proceedings. I don't know the details, and I didn't ask. The woman in the hotel charges, I don't know her name, and I don't want to. That part of the story is not mine to carry. What I carry instead is this: the knowledge of what I am capable of when I stop making myself small. I started my own firm 8 months after the divorce was finalized. Contracts consulting, property, commercial leasing, the kind of fine print that changes everything depending on whether you read it. I have 6 clients now. By the end of next year, I expect to have 12. I work from the townhouse in Decatur in the room that used to be Wendell's home office, which I repainted a color called Mineral Spring because I wanted the walls to feel like something new. Felicia is my unofficial CFO. Beverly calls me every Sunday. Cecile, Wendell's former VP of Operations. We ended up connecting on LinkedIn, which she initiated, and we've had coffee twice. She said she remembered the night of that work dinner, the home stuff comment. She said she'd thought about it for a long time after. I said I had too. I think about what Beverly said to me from the lobby of the Marriott Marquis that night. After I'd called her from the sidewalk, she said, "Go somewhere warm. Don't stand out in the cold." I did, and I haven't stood out in the cold since. There is something I want to say to anyone who is listening, who maybe recognizes something in this story, not the specific details, the Gala, the LLC, the frozen card, but the feeling.
The slow erasure. The way you can be the person building the foundation and still somehow end up outside on a sidewalk, holding your clutch in the cold. Pay attention to your finances. Both names on the accounts that matter.
Read the offer letters. Keep copies of things that seem too small to bother with. Not because every marriage ends this way. Mine was specific. My situation was mine. But because knowing what you have is not paranoia. It is dignity. I picked up my grandmother's earrings from the jewelry box on my dresser last week for no particular reason. Just held them for a minute. They're simple, small gold hoops with a little weight to them. She wore them every day for 40 years. I put them in, then I went to work.